Welcome to Royal Secret. In a kingdom known for its peace, elegance, and modern monarchy, a silent heartbreak was unfolding within the palace walls. For over half a century, Queen Margrethe II of Denmark reigned with brilliance, grace, and profound national loyalty. She wasn't just a queen. She was Denmark's symbol of resilience, a monarch who painted, wrote, translated ancient texts, and led her people through turbulent decades with both intellect and heart. But behind the crown jewels and national pride, another royal stood quietly beside her. Not quite equal, not quite content, a man whose title was Prince Consort, but who never truly found comfort in those words. His name was Henri de Montpezat, a French aristocrat turned Danish prince who married a queen and spent the rest of his life trying to understand what that truly meant. This is the haunting, intimate story of Prince Henrik, a man who lived in the heart of monarchy, yet in the shadow of his wife's glory. A prince without a crown. A husband without equal footing. Why did Prince Henrik, the husband of Denmark's beloved queen, live so unhappily inside a palace made of gold? To understand the man who stood in the queen's shadow, we must first meet the woman whose light shined so brilliantly it captured the heart of a nation, and eclipsed everything around her. Queen Margrethe II was no ordinary royal. Born in 1940 as the eldest daughter of King Frederik IX and Queen Ingrid, her future was uncertain in a kingdom that didn't yet allow women to ascend to the throne. That would change by the time she was 13, when Denmark amended its succession laws to allow her to become heir presumptive. With her razor-sharp intellect and multilingual fluency, Margrethe was a standout even among Europe's royalty. She studied at Cambridge, the Sorbonne, and Aarhus University. She translated books. She illustrated fairy tales. She even designed theatrical costumes. Margrethe was not only Denmark's head of state, she was its cultural ambassador, academic icon, and moral compass. When she became queen in 1972 following her father's death, the Danish people welcomed her with open arms. She modernized the monarchy with transparency, modesty, and a sense of duty that deeply resonated with the public. Approval ratings soared. Queen Margrethe wasn't just respected, she was beloved. But as her legend grew, so did the silence of the man beside her. Henri-Marie Jean-André de Montpezat was born into French nobility in 1934, raised in the grand traditions of aristocracy. Educated in law and political science, fluent in several languages, and well-traveled due to his career as a diplomat, Henri was every bit the Renaissance man. Charming, cosmopolitan, and strikingly handsome, he met Crown Princess Margrethe in London in the early 1960s. She was intelligent, dignified, and intriguing. He was witty, worldly, and unconventional. The attraction was instant. Their 1967 wedding was a spectacle of tradition and fairy tale romance. Henri became Prince Henrik of Denmark. But there was a condition. One that would define the rest of his life. He would never be king. The Danish monarchy, like many in Europe, follows strict succession traditions. Only the sovereign reigns. Their spouse supports from the sidelines. In Britain, it meant Prince Philip never became king. In Denmark, it meant Henrik would never be called anything more than Prince Consort. It was an insult that slowly poisoned him. He once said, "I am not a feminist, but I would not have accepted to marry the queen had I known that I would be treated as a third-rate citizen." His complaints began privately. Then came passive-aggressive interviews. Then, full-blown media statements. "Why am I not king?" he demanded, often pointing to gender bias. If Margrethe had married a king, she would be called queen. But I, a man, am denied the same. The Danish press mocked him. The palace issued tight-lipped responses. But the cracks were showing. Queen Margrethe and Prince Henrik were, by all outward appearances, a functional and affectionate couple. They had two sons, Crown Prince Frederik and Prince Joachim, both of whom loved their father dearly. They spent holidays at Marselisborg, toured the world, and often appeared united at royal events. But insiders whispered about tension. Queen Margrethe, deeply devoted to her duties, often left Henrik feeling isolated. He wanted more say in royal affairs, more ceremonial respect, more recognition. Instead, he got protocol, and more silence. The palace hierarchy was clear. The queen led, the prince followed. Henrik felt emasculated, irrelevant, a nobleman now surrounded by courtiers who saw him as an ornament, not a partner. He once declared publicly, "I am not just her appendage." In 2017, after years of public outbursts and semi-retirements, Prince Henrik shocked Denmark. He declared that he would not be buried beside Queen Margrethe at Roskilde Cathedral, the traditional resting place for Danish royals. It was a scandal, a heartbreak, a defiance of 1,000 years of royal tradition. When he passed away in 2018, he was cremated and his ashes divided, half buried in Danish soil, the other scattered at sea. Not beside his wife, not in the royal crypt. It was the last chapter in a life that had always struggled with compromise. Queen Margrethe mourned privately. She said his wishes would be respected. But the symbolism was clear. Henrik died still feeling like a prince without a throne. 90s footage of Prince Henrik walking behind Queen Margrethe during a state visit. The Queen is surrounded by dignitaries. Henrik walks a step behind, unacknowledged. What happens when a man of power, intelligence, and pride is told his role is simply to support, not to shine? For Prince Henrik, this was not a hypothetical question, it was a painful, lifelong reality. A Frenchman raised with traditional values, he had been taught that men lead, men protect, and men rule their families. But in Denmark, his role was rewritten the moment he said, "I do." When Prince Henrik married into the Danish royal family, he underwent a transformation that would quietly torture him for decades. He converted to Lutheranism. He changed his name from Henri to Henrik. He gave up his French citizenship. Even his pronunciation of Danish was mocked in public for years. And yet, despite these sacrifices, Henrik was never given the title of king. "Had I married another woman, I would not have had to make so many compromises," he once said in a rare, frustrated interview. Danish media labeled him the complaining prince, while others accused him of arrogance or being out of touch with modern gender norms. But behind those headlines was a man genuinely struggling with identity. He had no defined constitutional role. He was not permitted to act as regent. He couldn't attend state functions on behalf of the Queen unless specifically invited. Even at public appearances, he often stood just outside the spotlight, a figure seen but rarely celebrated. Publicly, Queen Margrethe and Prince Henrik presented a united front. Privately, there was tension, especially when it came to Henrik's expectations about his position and his personal importance. While Margrethe was widely respected for her discipline, Henrik longed for flexibility. He loved poetry, cooking, wine, gardening, and sculpture. He threw himself into Denmark's culinary scene, published poetry collections, and even raised prized dachshunds. But none of this filled the void of royal insignificance. Friends of the couple said Margrethe adored Henrik's warmth and intelligence, but often found his frustrations exhausting. Henrik, meanwhile, admired her brilliance but felt emasculated by her constant elevation above him. At one point, Henrik even left Denmark for several months, returning to his chateau in France to take a break from royal life. It was a royal marriage, yes, but one complicated by roles that neither fully chose nor completely controlled. In 2002, a shocking moment jolted the Danish monarchy into headlines. Queen Margrethe and Prince Henrik were on a state visit to Vietnam and Thailand. A formal dinner was arranged. But Henrik, furious that he had not been seated beside the Queen as the most senior male, abruptly left the event, and later, the country. He returned to his French estate in K, stating he was taking a vacation, but few believed it was anything less than a full-blown royal protest. Danish tabloids erupted. The palace scrambled. Public opinion was split. Some saw Henrik as petty, others sympathized with his desire for dignity. Later, when asked about the incident, Henrik said, "For many years, I have been the number two. And I am fed up with being number two." It was raw, real, and heartbreakingly honest. Prince Henrik may have struggled with his role as consort, but he was a dedicated and loving father. His bond with Crown Prince Frederik and Prince Joachim was deep and unshakable. He instilled in them a love for art, nature, and the value of thinking independently. As Frederik prepared to become king one day, Henrik's frustration softened, slightly. The idea that his son would become sovereign gave him some comfort, even pride. Still, the monarchy he had married into continued to operate in the old way. The Queen ruled alone. Henrik remained in the background. The Queen's own statements were always measured. She never publicly criticized Henrik, but neither did she endorse his more controversial demands. It was as though they had reached an unspoken agreement. She would rule as she must, and he would express his truth, no matter how inconvenient. Unable to change his title, Prince Henrik turned to the one place he had full control, the arts. He published several collections of poetry, including Cantabile, written in French and translated into Danish by Queen Margrethe herself. The collection was philosophical, romantic, melancholic. A prince's soul laid bare in verse. He sculpted abstract works that were exhibited in Danish galleries, bold, raw expressions of inner conflict. Many critics saw his art as an extension of his pain, an elegant, veiled protest against his invisibility. His final poetry collection, Whispers of the Shadowed Crown, was released just before his death. In it, a particularly telling stanza read, "I sit beside the crown, never touching, always near, in golden halls where echoes frown, my name is not what you hear. In your opinion, what can you say on a life leave by Queen Margrethe? Tell us in the comments section below."